The last real fight I got into was when I was in high school, and we were playing basketball in gym class, and I landed on this guy's foot, as one does playing basketball, and it turned into this immediate confrontation. And it just escalated in this stupid way. It's kind of amazing how fast shit spirals out of control. And so we started swinging at each other. And I remember he got maybe my chin a little bit, it wasn't bad. And then people were pulling us off each other, but I happened to get my arm loose. I was in mid-swing and got it loose. And just as they were pulling him back, I got him right in the eye. I'm not proud of it. Well, maybe a little bit proud of it. But he ended up with a huge welt on his eye. He then threatened to kill me after school, but we patched it up. It was fine. Point is this: violence really strikes one out of nowhere, deeply mysterious. The question of what is rage has always intrigued me, and I think a lot of us are fascinated by it, and it's shocking how little we understand anger and rage in human beings and in other animals, because it seems to be an emotion that's well distributed through the animal kingdom. What I want to do today is talk a little bit about what do we know so far about anger and rage from a scientific point of view, and really what does philosophy and psychology tell us about it? So welcome to Professor Asma's Guide to Unusual Knowledge. That hot, tightening sensation in your chest, that sort of flash of red behind the eyes, the ancient fire that can erupt in traffic during a Twitter argument. Oh no, we're not calling it Twitter anymore, whatever. Or in the chaos of war. Where does it come from? Why do we have it? And what, if anything, can philosophy do with it? Can you sort of heal it if it's a disease? And is it a disease? Is it a pathology at all? Or is it something deeply valuable for all mammals? Let's start with the biology. The neuroscientist Dr. Jaak Panksepp is one of the pioneers of affective neuroscience. And I'm very lucky and fortunate to have worked with Jaak Panksepp. He passed away a few years ago, a great mentor to me and the way I see the world. I highly recommend you look up Jaak Panksepp's books. They're fantastic. I'll try to put them in the links below if I can remember to do that. I oftentimes promise to do that and then forget. But Jaak really studied the emotions in the brain by doing sort of animal studies and being a very careful observer of human nature. And he identified what he called the rage system. And this is a deep subcortical network in the brain that evolved long before language or moral codes. This system includes areas like the medial amygdala, the paraaqueductal gray, the parts of the hypothalamus, and when triggered by restraint, like when somebody's holding you or you're pinned in somewhere or some threat or territorial invasion, then this system releases a kind of neurochemical cocktail that includes dopamine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, and substance P. I feel like substance P was the laziest naming of a neurotransmitter ever. Let's call it substance P. And this basically prepares us for attack behaviors. But here's the kicker. This system, it isn't just reactive, it has evolutionary purpose. Rage helps animals, including us, resist domination. It, basically helps us defend our offspring. So you need some rage if your own babies are being threatened or your offspring are being threatened. And it also helps you to claim resources. So there's fights for food, but also, it's very common in mammals for males to fight each other in order to get access to females and to basically procreate. So rage behaviors or aggressive behaviors definitely have been selected for over evolutionary history by natural selection. Without it, we'd be sort of docile prey in a very brutal world. So Dr. Panksepp argued that these emotional systems are hardwired programs in the mammal brain. They're not just social constructs. Now, this is kind of a debate in recent science. There's been a movement in the last few years to argue that emotions are social constructs. But Panksepp, and I agree, think that these are actually hardwired, and then experience sort of trains them onto specific things in our environment. So there is room for nurture and environmental developmental experience. We're not just robots, but there does seem to be some deep sort of structures to emotions, and rage is one of those things. So, all right, in modern life though, how does this apply? Modern life is basically a pressure cooker. And this is basically why I was arguing in this book I wrote called Why We Need Religion, and in other works too, that humans evolved, not just emotional responses, but also kind of emotional overflows. We don't just have the right amount of emotion given a stimulus. Our sort of cognitive complexity allows rage to linger, and it's basically can be directed at like abstract targets even. So you might originally be evolved to sort of be rageful or fearful towards certain kind of predators, but as modern human beings, that emotion spills into all kinds of other areas like systems of thought and ideologies, and maybe you have like love attraction towards certain celebrities or rage towards certain politicians, and you can even have very emotional relationship with invisible deities, the gods for that matter. And so human beings are meaning-making creatures. Like we have brains that are wired for stories and for symbols. And that means our ancient rage system sometimes like fires at phantoms, at basically these invisible realities or ideas. And that makes our emotional life much more complicated. And this is where psychology of anger comes in. Anger isn't just a neurochemical reaction, it's also a kind of cognitive appraisal. What do we think is good and bad, and why? We interpret something as unjust or intentional or violating a norm, and then we get mad. I remember a kid was kicking the back of my seat when I was on the train once, and I was kind of irritated, like, what? How disrespectful, And then I turned around, to kind of like read the kid out, and then I realized, he's developmentally disabled. He doesn't even know what I was doing. He's just kicking the seat in this kind of unintentional way. And, I was able to relax, and my anger was still cooking though. That was the thing. Like I had to sort of, it's not like you figure out, oh, it wasn't an intentional offense and then the anger disappears. That anger welled up. It's a kind of fluid system of dynamics within you, and it takes a while to sort of dissipate. So you have to think about these as two-level systems. There's the subcortical animal circuit that we were talking about that Dr. Panksepp, discovered, rage in this case, and then the sort of cortical interpretive overlay. So our stories or our identities and our values basically go on top of this stuff. They can help direct it or focus it. So when your boss forgets to credit you or your partner snubs you at a party, your cortex tells you, this is disrespect. This is betrayal. And then the ancient system responds. I was at a bar not that long ago, and I was introduced to this guy, and then I really thought he did something. I was trying to talk to him about something, and he really turned away and started talking to somebody else. I think it was like a pretty girl or something, and I felt very disrespected, and it was instantaneous. And I'm not alone in this. And it took me, I actually sort of said something really rude and then walked away. And then my friend was like, you almost got in a fight. And I was like, I was really pissed off. But I thought it was funny that this dynamic happens very fast, this kind of rage circuitry, and then a kind of theory of being socially disrespected can happen like in a moment. And then it takes a while to cool down. All right, now let's stir in a little philosophy into this cocktail. So the Stoics, like Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they argued that anger is always irrational. They saw it as a kind of intrinsically destructive loss of reason. So they thought there were sort of good emotions like joy and then negative emotions like anger. And so they didn't think it had any sort of teaching element or positive element. Basically, you just have to kind of extinguish this inner fire with self-discipline and detachment. This is probably an extreme view of rage, because even Aristotle thought anger was valuable if you directed it at the right person, at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right amount. When we're enraged, it's often because something we care about is being threatened. Our dignity, our loved ones, our sense of fairness. In this way, anger is like a moral compass. It's misguided sometimes, yes, but it's still real. It's identifying things in our environment. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche went further, and he saw sort of resentment as a kind of corrosive, passive anger turned inward. And instead of sort of letting anger out at the right sort of target, like Aristotle thought, or controlling it completely, extinguishing it like the Stoics thought, he thought the modern human being was basically doing a passive-aggressive version of it, where it was controlling in this sort of indirect, oblique way, and that a more direct expression of your rage was kind of a sign of the will and vitality, and so he sort of liked that more. On the other hand, you do need to control your rage in very high degrees if you're going to live in a civilization with other people. So it's necessary if we're going to be living in cities, social relationship with people who are not blood relatives, to be able to cooperate and get along with them. And that requires a kind of repression of our own anger, and that can be extremely healthy. The only problem is if you keep repressing and keep repressing, then you live this life of sort of, you're in a sadomasochistic relationship with your own ego. And that, he thought, was ultimately unhealthy. In the Buddhist tradition, anger is seen as a form of attachment. It's a kind of clinging to the ego or expectations. But even there, it's acknowledged as a powerful energy that must be transformed rather than sort of suppressed. Anger may be inevitable in Buddhism, but one has to learn to sort of let go of it as quickly as possible, because to hold on to it is the kind of tendency of craving that causes all human suffering. So for Buddhism, you also want to be able to let go of anger quickly. Not all anger is destructive, as I've been suggesting. Rage has fueled revolutions. It's toppled dictators. It's burned through the apathy of the status quo. Philosophers like Martha Nussbaum have even argued that righteous anger can be a moral emotion, alerting us to real injustices. So the key, however, is sort of control. Can we channel this evolutionary force without being consumed by it? Modern psychology offers some help. Techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, which is sort of descended from Buddhism, and even religious rituals have all been shown to regulate rage. Essentially, it's sort of training the cortex to work with, not against, the ancient circuits. So, all right, what is rage? It's not a glitch, really. It's not always irrational. It's a signal from our mammalian inheritance, really, like our evolutionary past, our phylogeny. It's a call to protect, to assert, to push back. It's also dangerous, as we know. When unexamined, it can metastasize into hate, into violence, into tribalism. We're seeing a lot of it in politics today. But philosophy doesn't extinguish rage. It gives us a way to understand it. Biology explains the circuitry. Psychology maps the sort of triggers of rage. And maybe, just maybe, wisdom teaches us when to listen and when to let go. As always, thanks for watching Professor Asma's Guide to Unusual Knowledge. As usual, if you're enjoying the show, check out our Patreon page at the link below. And also, if you just want to support us in a different way, share the show with your friends and hit the like button and all that other stuff. Spread the word. There's a lot of content creators out there. Way too many of us, I know. But if you are enjoying this show, please try to push us forward so that others can see the content and enjoy it as well. And stay in touch. I always read all of your messages and enjoy them and reply if I can. All right. See you next time, and always stay curious.